Dawn had just broken. The sky still had a bit of the mist of the old night. The fishing port was bustling with the sound of engines starting up. The clanging of metal, the loud calls of sunburned men. From afar, the salty smell of the sea mixed with the scent of engine oil and the damp wood smell from the old ship hulls, creating a very unique flavor. The smell of the sea, of the profession and of the livelihoods that have lasted from father to son. The scallop fishing boat, were anchored in rows. The hulls painted a faded blue. The decks filled with nets, ropes, pulleys and specialized baskets. No one among the fishermen said it out loud, but they all understood. Today would be a long day, but hopefully the big catch of scallops would make the whole village happy. The ship's whistle sounded, breaking the mist still lingering on the water's surface. The ship began to leave the dock, each layer of white foaming waves reflecting the shimmering morning sunlight like gold on the sea's surface. The sea breeze was cool, but hidden in it was the salty taste of salt and the pungent scent of seaweed. The sailors went about their business, some checking the machinery, some retying the anchor ropes, some checking the nets. The oldest fishermen, with their sinewy hands and wrinkled faces, stood at the bow of the ship, their eyes gazing far into the horizon, where they knew every shoal, every current, and where the scallop spread under the fine sand. The journey lasted for many hours. The ship cut away from the waves. The sun rose high, the light reflecting off the waves making the sea surface look like silver. The captain, a man in his 50s, stood in front of the cabin, his eyes sharp as an eagle's. He constantly observed the locator. The screen scanning the seabed showed a blurry image of the sand and traces of movement, a signal that there was a dense field of scallops below. When the signal became clearer, he raised his hand to signal, and the whole crew immediately prepared. The pulleys began to squeak, and each basket was lowered, sinking into the dark blue water. Each basket weighed tens of kilograms, specially designed to gently scrape the sand and collect the scallops without destroying the surrounding habitat. When the baskets hit the bottom, the cables tightened, and the ship moved slowly, dragging the equipment that was sweeping the seabed. Everyone on deck almost held their breath. Only the steady sound of the engine and the sound of the waves could be heard. Everyone understood that the first catch was the most important. It signaled whether the whole trip would be a bumper or a bust. When the signal showed that the baskets were full, the sailors started to turn the winch. The sound of metal rubbing, the sound of water pouring down, and then, plump scallops. Their gray-brown shells mottled. sparkled. Glistening in the sunlight appeared. They were alive, their shells tightly closed. A few opened, revealing the pure white meat inside. The fishermen cheered, their laughter drowning out the sound of the engine. Each scallop is a reward from the sea, the result of many hardships and long nights of drifting on the waves. Before they can rest, they lower their baskets again. The work repeats itself, dropping, pulling. Sorting, and putting them in storage boxes. The young fishermen quickly collect the scallops. Use knives to gently pry them open to check their quality, then put them in ice boxes placed close to the corner of the deck. Ice is poured continuously to keep the scallops fresh for as long as possible. Because scallop meat is most delicious and sweet when alive or just shelled. Meanwhile, a few others take the opportunity to mend their nets, adjusting the joints that have slipped. Due to rubbing against the reefs. In the middle of the ocean, the sun is high, the wind is stronger, the waves begin to roll, but no one seems discouraged. The sweat on their foreheads is quickly dried by the wind. Everyone understands that this is not just a job, this is a lifetime of commitment. A pride in bringing back to the mainland the most wonderful gifts from the ocean. The captain stood in the middle of the deck, watching the crates fill up. Satisfied smile on his lips. He knew that if the weather held, they would have many more big catches before they returned to port. The afternoon gradually fell on the sea. The golden sunlight of the last day spread out in sparkling strips like metal on each wave. The ship continued to move diligently in the direction the captain had planned. The gentle breeze carried salty water vapor in the face, accompanied by the sound of seabirds calling loudly above. They flew along the ship, hovering as if waiting for a meal from the pieces of clams or small fish left on the deck. The fishermen were still busy with their familiar work rhythm, dropping baskets, pulling baskets, sorting, packing boxes. Each movement was quick, neat and precise, because if they were just a little slow, the cable could get tangled or the equipment could get stuck on a reef. In the corner of the deck, two middle-aged men were chatting animatedly about last year's sea trip. When they encountered a school of giant scallops, each one nearly as big as an adult's open hand. They recalled that the sea that day was as calm as a lake. The sky was clear and cloudless, and after only 4 hours, the deck was filled with crates of fresh clams. Those memories made everyone more hopeful about this trip, even though today's weather was sometimes windier than forecast. As the sun gradually disappeared behind the horizon, the space changed to a different color scheme. Orange and pink intertwined, reflecting on the rippling water surface. The captain ordered preparations for the night fishing shift, the time when scallops often open their shells to feed. Making harvesting easier, each high-power halogen bulb was turned on, casting a bright yellow light onto the water. attracting schools of small fish swimming under the ship's side. The sound of the winch rang out regularly. Each time the basket was pulled up, the shells still shone. Light. There were large, thick-shelled scallops, several years old. The meat inside promised to be even sweeter. The fishermen quickly transferred them to the temporary processing area right on the ship. One person used a thin-bladed knife to gently separate the shells, taking the white meat and placing it on a stainless steel tray. Others washed them under a direct seawater tap, then placed them in a plastic box with ice. The process is continuous, without stopping, because in the middle of the ocean, time is the deciding factor in keeping the best quality of clam meat. In the galley, the aroma of hot soup and coffee wafts up. A few fishermen sit close together, eating and watching their watches, waiting for their turn to work. Their stories revolve around family, the season, and even simple dreams: building a new house, sending their children to college, or simply buying a new motor. Bike for their wives. Sweat, sleepless nights in the storm, all are wrapped up in those hopes. Outside on deck, the wind begins to get stronger. The waves lift the ship up and down rhythmically but with great force. Occasionally, a big wave comes, splashing salty drops onto the sailors' sunburned faces. They are not shaken in the slightest. Their eyes are still focused on the work, their hands still tightly gripping the cables. The lights on the boat cast long streaks of light on the waves, like golden silk ribbons dancing in the middle of the night sea. Each time the basket is pulled up full, the group lets out a short cheer, just enough to add motivation. The scallops are continuously transferred to the cold storage, where the temperature is maintained at just a few degrees Celsius. The space there is cold. The steam rises like mist, but it is the ideal, temporary home to keep the scallops alive until they reach the dock. In the corner of the storage, an air compressor runs continuously, keeping the seawater circulating in the tanks. This way the scallops breathe and maintain maximum freshness. In the middle of the night sea, the sound of waves blends with the sound of engines and the sound of metal colliding to create a typical symphony of the seafaring profession. Occasionally, a young fisherman looks up at the sky, where thousands of stars twinkle like scattered glitter. He smiled to himself, then returned to work, because in this place, the beauty of nature always goes hand in hand with harsh challenges around midnight. The originally clear sky suddenly appeared with dark clouds coming from the east. The sea wind changed direction, blowing stronger, carrying the humid smell of water vapor and a rumbling sound from deep below. The captain frowned slightly, his eyes following the unusually long waves that were crawling towards the ship. He signaled the chief sailor to adjust the speed and direction, and reminded everyone to tie down the tools and containers. The first wave came, hitting the side of the ship, causing the whole ship to shake. Seawater splashed, falling onto the deck like salty rain. The net baskets that were being pulled up also swayed violently. The cables were stretched to the limit. The metal screeched. Several young fishermen had to hold tightly to the winches, their whole bodies tilting with each stroke of the ship to maintain balance. At that moment, everyone understood that if they lost the net baskets, not only would they lose production, but there would also be a risk of damaging the equipment, affecting the entire trip. But even in the midst of the tension, the first basket was pulled up safely. The lights on the deck reflected on the wet shells, looking like hundreds of silver coins just scooped up from the bottom of the sea. Cheers rang out. Drowning out the whistling wind. No one stopped to rest. They continued to operate the winch, bringing up the second and third baskets in succession, like a race against the approaching storm. The people on the preliminary shift also sped up. Their hands quickly peeled, cleaned and packaged the shells. Everyone's face shone with a look of intense concentration. In the cold hold, each crate of clams was neatly stacked, the lid tightly closed to prevent water from entering. When the waves were high, the captain was controlling while constantly communicating with the radar observer to ensure that the ship remained on a safe trajectory but did not miss the circle of scallops at the bottom. The wind howled in gusts. Occasionally a wave higher than the side of the ship crashed down. But the spirit on board was not shaken. They were used to nights like this, nights when the sea tested the bravery of men. In the bright yellow light, the salty water to the fishermen's sunburned faces like a thin layer of mist. They did not wipe them off, nor did they pay attention, only knowing that each basket of nets pulled up safely was a small victory. Then, like a surprise gift, when the wind and waves had calmed down a bit, the next basket brought back the largest amount of scallops from the beginning of the trip. The scallops were plump, with smooth, shiny shells, larger than the size of a hand. An old fish fisherman whistled softly. It was a lucky sign that he believed the sea was opening its heart to them. Cheerful laughter spread across the deck, drowning out the cold wind and the tiredness of their hands. Around dawn, the sky gradually cleared. A pale pink light appeared in the east, signaling the second dawn they had witnessed offshore on this trip. The sea surface after the storm became unusually calm, each small wave gently rippling like a silk sheet stretching to the horizon. At this time, the captain decided to let everyone rest in turns. Each group took a nap, while the other group maintained a steady pace of pulling the basket to take advantage of the favorable weather. In the resting cabin, the aroma of hot coffee wafted up, mixed with the smell of sea salt still lingering on wet clothes. Stories began to buzz again. From the experience of identifying clam varieties, to how to prepare grilled scallops with scallion